ladies and gentlemen of the media. Are you ready? We give you a few minutes? A few seconds. Nimeona leto pale. Rafiki ya mtu fulani. So I think when you're ready, you can give us a signal. A short statement, well, it's not that short, about the protests beginning tomorrow. They'll run through Thursday all the way to Friday. And I wish to start, then I'll invite the Honorable Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. We wish to make a few clarifications on developments around our plans for protests that run from tomorrow through Thursday to Friday this week. Against the backdrop of the protests, the Kenya Kwanza administration has withdrawn all security previously attached to the leadership of Azimio'S One Kenya Coalition Party. Everyone associated with this party and the ongoing protests, including the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, the Honorable Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, the Honorable Martha Karua, the leaders of minority, and a host of Azimio governors and members of parliament have had their security withdrawn. This withdrawal of security completes a process that began weeks ago with scaling down and in some cases removal of the security cover of several of the party's leaders in parliament. We are making this disclosure not because we are desperate for state protection. We are aware that millions of Kenyans are exposed to danger every day, and our lives are not in any way more special than that of other Kenyans. We have chosen to make this public in response to many inquiries from the public and the media. So we confirm the security cover for our leaders has been withdrawn. We are also raising it because it continues a pattern of this regime chipping away at the Constitution in a manner that may look inconsequential, but in the fullness of time amount to something major. This is how dictatorship starts, by chipping away at the Constitution and established traditions, suspending civil liberties, the rule by decree, repression of political opponents, not abiding by the procedures of the rule of law, and the existence of a cult of personality centered on the leader. These developments are taking root in our country as we speak, and the withdrawal of security is part of that development. So Kenyans should not say later that they did not see a dictatorship taken off in the country. The leaders whose security has been withdrawn had them by virtue of positions held in previous regimes. As former Prime Minister, and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga was the second Prime Minister of the Republic of Kenya, and former Vice President Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka was the 10th Vice President of the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Raila Odinga and Honorable Stephen Musyoka are entitled to round-the-clock protection by the state, not as a favor, but by provisions of our laws. It is expected that a decision is taken to maintain, enhance, reduce the security cover of officers based on intelligence about threats perceptions faced by these public figures. We do not understand what intelligence perceptions informed the withdrawal of the security of the second Prime Minister of our Republic and the 10th Vice President of our Republic. Azimio sees this latest step as a continuation of the Kenya Kwanza signature politics of revenge, intimidation, blackmail, and physical assassination that also abuses the Constitution. We take note that the withdrawal of security has been effected at a time when Kenya Kwanza has revived a properly resourced killer squad named Operation Support Unit under a certain Zachary Kuria, and it is embedded in the official police service for Zachary Kariuki, and it is embedded in the official police service for this dirty work. I now wish to invite the Honorable Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka to make the rest of the statement. Then invite Honorable Karua. Thank you.
We have proper, accurate, and detailed information about OSU. We know its members wear civilian clothes. They travel in groups of 5 people from one ethnic community. They are heavily armed with lethal weapons. They are better facilitated in terms of logistics and transportation, remuneration, communication, and weapons and the country's official security agencies. This is a group that last week killed people in Kamukunji, Mlolongo, and Jogoo roads. They fired at people from unmarked green, black, gray, silver, red, and white, mostly Subaru vehicles. They also fired from one gray Toyota Succeed KBD 612G. Each of the 5 occupants of each of the vehicles was from one ethnic community, as has been stated before. These vehicles are always parked at the traffic police headquarters near the Kenyatta Hospital, at the Anti-Terror Police Unit, and Nairobi Regional Headquarters. We restate that only mission of OSU squad is to assassinate or grievously harm Azimio leaders and Kenyans protesting against harmful government policies. OSU is a squad Kenya Kwanza resolved to cooperate with, supposedly to ensure that there is no loss of life and livelihoods. It is a squad that will kill people tomorrow and during upcoming protests. We thank Kenyans on Twitter and on social media because they on their part have been able to pick on this killer squad and spread it all over. Of course, we are still gathering evidence in this regard. I now call on Mheshimiwa Martha Karua to make the rest of the statement.
The party further notes, before then, Samahani, the government has entered into a public-private partnership with militia to cripple freedom of assembly and protests. The party further notes that the security withdrawal comes days after William Ruto promised kusafirisha Honorable Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta. Indeed, we remain eternally grateful to Mr. Ruto for uttering those words. Out of the abundance of his heart, his mouth spoke. It is a warning. It also comes days after Ruto openly instructed Kenya Kwanza to recruit and arm supporters for a confrontation with protesters. Ruto has called his supporters to Kenya's version of Armageddon. The meeting held at State House last Saturday was clearly a planning meeting. It came up with a clear command, control, funding, and mobilization of resources and people structures for purposes of carrying out genocide. Its resolutions are already being implemented in various parts of the country, where some governors are mobilizing people to counter protesters. It is also taking the shape of greater surveillance being conducted around our leaders' homes and offices, which are being surveyed by people in unmarked vehicles. What Ruto decreed in State House last week is part of what is going on in Sondu, Kericho, and Kisii-Kericho boundaries, where an ethnic militia is being armed against local communities. The militia has protection of the police. The events in Sondu are expected to be replicated in other parts of the country in coming days. We further take note that although Kenya is not at war, all police and other security officers have been recalled from leave to deal with protesters. The provisions of the Constitution on the right to protest notwithstanding, Ruto is at war, not just with Azimio, but with the entire Kenyan population, especially those who do not support him. We appeal to our neighbors in the region not to join Ruto's war against Kenyans. Our neighbors must not supply Ruto with tear gas and ammunition to fight Kenyans. Our crime is only that we have challenged Ruto to bring down the cost of food, reconstitute the IEBC in a way that includes all players, also to audit the last year's presidential elections, and to respect political parties. As leaders, we have reached the decision that we shall fear not those who kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul. So, even with the intimidation of withdrawal of security, Azimio confirms that the protests planned for Wednesday, tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday this week are on as earlier announced. We appeal to the police to be professional, to resist being turned into a killer squad for hire by politicians and a regime suffering acute legitimacy deficit. We appeal to our police to maintain their professionalism, that's once again, that has been seen from some of its members who have participated in UN missions across the globe with enhanced individual careers and who have lifted the image of our country. We appeal to them to resist being used to provide cover to tribal militia that kills people in the name of policing. A time comes when all the crimes will be answered for by everyone involved, including Ruto himself. They need to think and think again before committing these crimes against citizens. We remind Ruto and the entire police service that responsibility for protection of Kenya is not a shared duty. Under our constitution, the duty bearer is the state and the law enforcement agencies. As protesters, what is required of us is just to give a notice that we'll be having a procession. We have given adequate notice. It is their duty to ensure that no criminal elements infiltrate the protests and turn them violent. And in our experience, it is the police who have turned peaceful protests violent. We take this opportunity to thank the UN Human Rights Office for calling out the government the Ruto regime over the use of excessive force by police to quell protests. Indeed, the use of force has been unnecessary and totally disproportionate and has included use of firearms and shooting with an intention to kill and actually killing. We have always appealed to our protesters to remain peaceful, and we ask them to continue doing so. We urge our people to obey the law, respect private property and even public property in the course of protests. We maintain that we have always been peaceful until police decide to import violence, bullets and tear gas into our protests. A couple of days ago, we were able to get into town, address Kenyans, and dispersed peacefully without any injuries or deaths. We were also able to have lunch and hold impromptu meeting with the people at Kenyatta Market, which also ended very peacefully. Because there were no police, all our engagements are peaceful until the police show up and unleash violence. We reiterate that we have instructed our lawyers to prepare and institute legal proceedings against police officers who have gone against their constitutional duty of protecting life and property of Kenyans during protests. In this regard, we are appealing to all Kenyans of goodwill who have photographic or video evidence of police brutalizing citizens to share the same with us to aid the case that our legal team is working on. We further ask Kenyans to resort to citizen journalism and photography and to film state officers, including police and politicians, who in the course of duty abuse and brutalize Kenyans. We appeal to Kenyans to take very seriously the unfolding chain of events. A new dictatorship is slowly taking root through nepotism, corruption, use of force, getting rid of opponents, and suspension of the Constitution. We call on Kenyans to put on their old armor of courage and work to take their country back before this dictatorship takes firm roots. We encourage Kenyans to continue picketing, demonstrating, and protesting in their own ways, in their own local areas, as much as they can. Our voices must be heard. In Nairobi, we will have 3 convergence points: Joseph Kang'ethe grounds, Kamukuji grounds, Jacaranda grounds. Further, at midday tomorrow, we ask Kenyans to come out of their homes and bang sufurias, pots and pans to signify lack of food. The sufuria movement kicks off tomorrow and continues until the battle is won. At that hour of midday, we also call on motorists to stop wherever they are on the highways and roads and to hoot and flash lights in support of this movement. We encourage Kenyans to continue appending their signatures against Ruto and Gachagua and the entire regime. We are pleased to announce this morning we have hit over 6 million signatures. Those are 6 million citizens fed up with the Ruto regime. Let's continue signing up at tumechoka.com, tumechoka.net, tumechoka.org. Let us meet in the Kamukunjis across Kenya tomorrow, on Thursday and Friday. A luta continua. And before we sign off, apologies that our leader, the people's president, is not with us. He is in other engagements, critical engagements, and we spoke with him and we are going to report to him the progress so far. Asanteni sana.
Very good. Oh, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
My name is Irene from Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. The diplomatic community has just issued a statement asking you and the government to have a sit down. And this has brought together the high commissioners and ambassadors.
We are aware that members of the diplomatic corps have asked for a meeting. And in fact, I've given, because I was given the responsibility to be the convener on our side. So what you have said is news, but what we need to reiterate is, of course, we can never say no to envoys who are accredited to our country when they want to meet up with the leadership. We will have to brief them accordingly. It's a briefing business. But it's the same envoys who are also bound by the resolutions of the UN Human Rights Center in Geneva, because all the representatives from their respective countries collectively issued that statement, highlighting the fact that it is the police who got out and killed our people. We had the very difficult mission of seeing some of the Kenyans who are killed. 3 bodies at Shalom Hospital. In fact, the names are there. There are now 4. And we know there will be a burial in Kiminini, for example. One young man, Wanjala, be buried there on Friday, and Kakamega on Saturday. There'll be one young man who in Emali, and the problem that emanated in Emali because people saw this young man who was going to join Egerton University or Moi University in September to do ICT. He came out with his mother and was killed in the presence of his mother. He had nothing to do with any demonstrations or just watching what the police were doing. He will also be buried. That young man's ambition in life was, because the mother is a single mother, to go study, get a university degree, come and put up a home for his mother. You can imagine, therefore, how shattered that single mother is in Emali. And as a result of that, people came out. And you can look at each of these cases where, as a result of the killer squad, the people we saw, all of them had bullet wounds. The ones who succumbed had them on the head, on the chest. But the majority of them were running away. Why kill people who are running away? Because the bullets were from the back. So these are some of the things that we will share with the envoys. And we expect them also not to be partisan in any way. Thank you.
Can we have one more? Yes. At our convenience, we have received their request, but we have also been talking to them because, like Martin Luther King once said, at the end of the day, we will not remember the harsh words of our friends, but the loud silence of our friends. They have been silent when people are getting killed here. Why would it take someone from Geneva to issue a statement that was issued, and they are here and they have not spoken? We will engage them at our convenience. Thank you very much.